All right. How's everyone doing? What's going on, guys? AFBF did not expect this. Hello. I like to do some streams here and there. Hair's all fucked up. Ever since I've been growing my hair out, my hair is like longer. It's kind of like not only like it's like uncomfortable. Like it feels feels terrible. I see why people wear IEMs, you know? Like in-ear monitors and like earbuds and shit. Oh, it feels terrible sometimes. I don't know why, but yeah. I think I might get a haircut soon. It's been too long. Oh. Yeah, I definitely think I'm gonna get a haircut soon. My hair's too goddamn long. But enough about me. How are you guys? We did our last stream with pills. We can reflect on that because I'm not gonna lie, guys. I've been reflecting a lot on what he says or said. He actually doesn't say it enough. Ironically, grew my hair out and want to shave it because less vanity and upkeep to focus on my real transcendental nutting. Absolutely, I used to have. I don't know if I think I may have told you guys about this, but I used to have like super long hair. Did anyone, you guys know that? Here, I'll show you guys a picture. I used to have like hair all the way down to like well past my shoulders. See if there's any pictures. Dude, I have this really weird talent where I can look like a different human being and like there through like years. It's weird. All right, here. I'll see if that's yeah, that's me in the middle. Uh with my brothers, my family. All right. How did you like your convo with pills? Give us impressions. Okay. Um it was great. That was okay. That was one of the most uncomfortable conversations I've ever had though on stream. And I didn't want to make it seem like I was uncomfortable. I was precisely uncomfortable because of a lot of the significant shit he was saying. And it was hard to wrap my brain around it on stream. It was hard to process what to say. I was kind of like shocked. That is not you. Yeah, guys, you have here. I think I made a on my Instagram. You guys can I don't know if you guys saw this. If any of you guys follow me on Instagram, you absolutely should. I'm just kidding. You don't need to. I don't mind Instagram. I actually quite like Instagram. Because you can easily filter out douchey accounts. Twitter is actually where the toxicity is. Oddly enough, I've had way better conversations and way better experience on something like Instagram than I ever have on Twitter. So yeah, I have this really weird thing. That's me to the right. That's my senior year. That's me. That's me again. That's me again. Oh shit. And then that's me like years later. I look like three different human beings within a span of like 4 years. I don't know. I think I got Christian Bale beat. He's got some competition, except I can't act. And I don't want to. All right. Enough about my narcissism. My deep libidinal ego. I keep it intact. But at the end of the day, I'm still a boring fuck. So look straight at the camera. It's just that. Um, Nice to see you on stream. Dudes, Heidegger is wild. Yeah, he is. So, that pills conversation, that was something else. So, I think a lot of you guys know, a lot of my, okay, right, like our channel's centered around like descriptive philosophy and trying to explain pretty hard concepts like concepts that are a bit. I'm not even gonna say concepts because that's kind of like a watered down part of our channel. I try to encompass an entire book or an entire work or an avenue in philosophy, and I like to put that into video form and make it easy and accessible. I don't do just concept videos. Hell no. It's actually something I kind of pride myself on, is I want to do more than just, that because that's kind of everything. Is like there's concept videos on theory and philosophy. I try to do more than that. Hopefully I'm succeeding. But what I like to do on stream and what I talk about, it's a little bit more personal. It's a little bit it's a little bit more it's a little bit more about what I actually think, right? And what I'm actually concerned with in a more personal lens. And that revolves around a lot of the political environment around us. Namely, like specifically a lot of like political communication and online communication. There's problems, right? We have massive problems with how we communicate with each other online. People don't talk to each other. People do not talk to each other in real life as they do online. And I think if we could get to a point where it was similar, I feel like personal discussion, face to face, it's not that bad. It really isn't. I think people do pretty okay with that. They really do. And I try to sift through a lot of, look, I think when it boils down to it, my politics, what I'm interested in, even from a deeper theoretical lens, is how we take really good ideas from someone like Marx that are quite popular on the left, right? Like Marx is not dead. Like Marx is still like, conservatives are right when they say Marx is this sort of, he acts as this, well, they're not right. They say that leftists love Marx, and they do, but they love him in a different way than what they expect. Marx is a fucking ghost, right? I think Derrida and even Fisher had got this right, that like Marx is something that haunts the left. And he will for the foreseeable future until something like a system of socialism is going to pop. Like humanity has made it clear, at least a large part of humanity, they're not going to rest until we can live in a world that's more reflective of the prescriptive goals of like Marx and Engels. I think that's true. The thing is, though, is when you get to a lot of the ideological tendencies and you get to the symbolism, nothing has fundamentally changed at all. Like, guys, truly, since Marx, like Marxism, Leninism still really is, and I really consider Marxism, Leninism, Maoism as pretty much the same fucking thing. And in a lot of ways, it truly is. Within the sphere of Marxism, it's a conservative. It operates theoretically. It's not right. It's technically dialectical, technically, but in reality, how it operates as a very kind of conservative sphere of Marxism. It's a upholding of certain ideals that really, dude, like Marxist Leninists do not want to let it go. And their idea is that through scientific socialism, we can't abandon certain principles, we can't abandon certain strategies, and there's so much more to just material organization when it comes to politics. And maybe this is where my framework's coming in, is like I like things like semiotics, I like things like critical theory, I think things like subjectivity. Marxists typically, the idea of there's a lot of vulgar materialist. The idea of anything subjective, like anything around the individual or subjectivity, which Marx and Engels did not negate, by the way. Marx and Engels were very explicitly clear that individuals were real. One of the markings that made us human was a sort of ability to recognize individuality. But we can't obviously recognize our individuality without a community, and that still stands, in my opinion, as something completely correct. Hegel sort of made the same point. And I'm interested on where we can get newer analyses of capitalism, and we can merge them into a sort of more concrete, organized sort of Marxism. Because Marxism does a lot of good things, right? Marxism is very, like, Marxism can give us really good ideas on how certain organizations should work. I actually don't think something like scientific socialism is bullshit. I think it's overstated. I think people think when they hear, they don't think what actually, like when you say scientific socialism, most people, they don't think that the thing that scientific socialism really is, they don't think that when they hear that. Really, scientific socialism, the best way, language in my opinion, to put it, is like analytical socialism, or analytical, the process and trying a concrete way of trying to implement things. But that doesn't mean it's like scientific in the hard science sense. Sorry, Marxist. I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. I'm just kidding. Listen, as much of a Marxist as I am, I get very irritated with them. And so I'm interested in trying to merge a descriptive part of Marxism, trying to find new tools to make into an arsenal, right? There's things like post-Marxism that have done this. There's like semiotics. There's post-structuralism. We can use a lot of these tools to our disposal, and we can articulate a reality that people experience day to day. Real people outside the sphere of just online politics, outside the sphere of like just political like identification, people who are just going about their lives. I think we can describe their situation so much more presciently when we not only elaborate on the political economy, right? All Marxists agree with this, but we can elaborate on their subjectivity and what they experience as an individual, whether that be existentialism, philosophy rooted in existentialism, whether that be rooted in sort of the consumption of signs and lifestyles being sold and bought to them. These things are like rejected by a lot of Marxists, and I hate that because there is no bigger dogmatism in my mind. One of the most one of the things that really got me to understand truly the pervasive nature of the United States was Adorno. It was fucking Adorno, and it was critical theory, right? So like I already knew the basic critiques of capitalism via Marx and Engels, and it's significant and it's still relevant today, as sad as that is. But when you start to get into critical theory, it starts to get a lot more prescient. It starts to feel a lot more real, and it starts to relate to you as a person a lot more effectively, if you ask me. Things like the culture industry, things like sign value and exchange, these things are real, right? And they affect more than just the exterior structures that also affect you. It actually affects you quite directly. And I think being able to find a way to see, if my political project is worth anything, trying to see how we can use as many tools at our disposal as possible as to, actually affect the exterior structures around us. Now, but at the same time, when Pills came on, I think he sort of has the same thing that he has the same view. Online politics is a very aesthetic thing, because that's something I'm interested in. How the fuck do you root the aesthetic surface nature of politics? The identity, the sort of weird, the weird jouissance, or the weird, because look, if there's one thing also psychoanalysis does, is it shows that there's a fucking lack behind a lot of the things that you do. And this is what people do. This is what people do with political ideology. I mean, it's just like the object cause of desire in so many ways. People do things due to a specific lack. And if you can try to at least elaborate on these conditions, these forms of human subjectivity, this is good. This is fundamentally a good thing. You can try to at least understand the parameters in which you are operating and understand what you might be doing. Because, again, what people think they're doing online, what people think they're doing when they say something, what I'm doing right now, often I'm not really doing. I'm doing something else according to the perceptions of other people. And we need to be very clear. And that involves an articulation and an insight around the form of what we are doing, of the parameters in which we're doing things. It's not fucking good enough to go on the internet, to go talk and report and do journalism like a million other fucking journalists do. You know, like one of the biggest things I see online is like, we need more left voices. No, we don't. No, I'm sorry, we actually don't. It's flooded, and you guys are all doing the same fucking thing. It's the same shit. I think we, in many ways, humans are very creative, but we're not creative enough, right? And I don't want to lose that creativity in politics. But Pills, obviously, he just has the approach that I just don't even talk about it. And that's fair if he wants to take that approach. I wish he would talk about that a little bit more. Because I think what he said was super significant, right? He says, what is politics other than a severely surface aesthetic thing? And you're not doing what you're doing. And he says, in a lot of ways, like, this is why we have priests. This is why we have people, and I'm doing it right now, right? In a way. And that's why he doesn't want to talk about it. And so this is where I think the flaw in his thinking is. I think Pills hates the idea of priests or people who are like God tier messengers of truth or their specific sort of thing. I think he rejects that. And I think there's a cynicism there, and it's a correct cynicism to have, because there's a lot of people like that. There is, I don't mean to have comments deleted, guys. Psychoanalysis is the essence of bourgeoisie thinking. It's fundamentally anti-revolutionary. Oh God, I don't even know what the fuck that I have no idea what that means. That isn't in my mind. Yeah. And no, I don't think there's any mods. There's not any mods. There might be something. Are you guys linking something that might be happening? Yeah, I don't know. I psychoanalysis as the essence of bourgeoisie thinking. I literally, that seems so loaded. I have no idea how to break that apart. It's, is this a joke? Colin, it's because it's centered in the individual. Well, no, it's not. Not necessarily. That's the whole look. That was the whole goal of Eros and Civilization, was to point out that the failings of psychoanalysis is the fact that it didn't develop as something social. So, like what Lacan talks about, guys, even Freud in so many ways, their commentary wasn't just on the individual. It was a sociological endeavor in so many ways. Neo-Freudians or later psychology put that onto the individual. But that's not what psychoanalysis is. It's understanding forms of sociology and how we interact with each other and what we do. Lacan is like the biggest sociologist in the fucking world, if anything. He's a subjective sociologist. But like Lacan's, if you're going to fucking describe Lacan as someone that observes just the individual, you are wrong. Anthony, I do. I do. So I on YouTube, what I'll do is eventually, guys, when I do this full time or I try to find something, I'll create a second channel just for streams. Right now, though, I do have my interviews with other people on a playlist, so you have the ability to look at like interviews and stuff like that. But for just streams like this, I have it on my Patreon and stuff like that. Because it's too difficult for me to make clips and stuff like that. I simply do not have enough time on my hands, and I don't have enough money to hire someone. Literally, Freud's reflection on war and death is literally a sociological. Absolutely, that's really what psychoanalysis truly. That is like the essence. That is the true utility of psychoanalysis. It isn't the individual. The reason why psychoanalysis has been sort of rejected along psychological confines is in many ways, it's bad at observing just the individual. You can only observe subjectivity, individuality within the relation of other people and signs, right? And in that sense, that is a very sociological endeavor. So in my mind, something like that is very useful at analyzing larger social structures at large. That's my problem, though. This is when we use language We box things in way more than what we'd expect, and that requires a lot of work. What the definition of something is right now is something that has to be open. If that is not open, you're going to fail at looking at that thing. Just like it makes perfect sense when people articulate that psychoanalysis is something extremely useful in a sociological sense, but that's the opposite of what you're told psychoanalysis initially is. This is what I mean. Listen, in so many ways, and this is what I'm concerned with, leftist, how we operate politically is the true conservative endeavor. Like, what is the left, especially how they operate online, other than upholding the conservation of certain ideological forms of thinking? That's exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. And that's a fucking problem. That's a massive problem. And so a lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, this sort of thinking, it just stops revolution. So what they're actually claiming here, and that might be true, but what they're saying here is that it doesn't matter if it's false consciousness, the very false consciousness Marx and Engels talked about as being harmful to human continuation. It doesn't matter if it's false consciousness, so long as you're doing what you're doing within the ideological parameters they set for you. So if you're not making revolution, or you're not doing this and this and that, it's okay. It doesn't matter what you're doing on a subjective level. So if you're not working towards X or Y goal, fuck you. Like, you're done. You're missing the point. And that, in my mind, is extremely dogmatic and worrisome. And we can't. That's not. Ironically, that does nothing to that is everything to hinder an actual larger organizational thing, right? If your idea to organize is to appropriate or push a certain ideological tendency or a consciousness, a false consciousness, that you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong, completely wrong. I'll answer some questions now. So, philosophy always tries to go back home, and thus the need for non-philosophy. In many ways, absolutely. Yeah. Would you say that your channel is going to take more socio-political approach rather than philosophical ones? Yeah, you know, again, we're going to go wherever we go, right? I think that's probably right. I'm interested in this in a political sociological sort of thing, and that's why when having Pills on, it was like really hard because it's very. It was hard to respond because he was saying things so presciently. You can tell that Pills is a pretty quiet, or not a quiet. He's a pretty private guy. I can tell, and I think he does that out of a certain form of cynicism, and he sees the shit around him, and he finds it to be fucking stupid, and rightfully so. And I think Pill sees an overconfidence in a lot of how people operate, and they don't understand exactly what they're doing. And I think in many ways he wants to hold himself to that same standard. And so he doesn't talk about certain things like this, like what we were talking about on stream. I got him to open up, and what he said was pretty fucking significant. And it was hard for me to respond or ask him further questions because what he was saying was pretty significant, and you can tell that he. Yeah. That in a lot of ways, talking the framework in which politics is done is just so insufficient. And so his idea is that if I can do something more than just that, or not that, do something other than that, the actual political implications are much larger, right? And that's exactly the case. Like, truly, like what, like, look, not to be a little bit arrogant here, but what we are doing here is more like what we're doing here is far more important politically than any fucking. I'm serious. I mean this. I mean this. And same with someone like Pills. What they're doing is so much more important politically than some random like YouTube channel that just does nothing but report on political happenings. Like, truly, it is. It's like the more you focus on purely politics, the less you're actually doing something, right? You're boxing yourself in. Okay. Freud was an open anti-Marxist. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Absolutely, he was. I'm sure. Same with Heidegger. I don't know. A lot of philosophers are anti. Same with Nietzsche. I don't care though. For someone to be like anti-Marx, and to reject them, to reject certain philosophers on those lines, that is not a fan. I gotta say. Okay, we'll go back. I think everyone takes on a conservative bent when applying practical work. I don't know. Yeah, and it's not to say that, you know, that is the thing though. When you're doing, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, when you're talking in an idea, when you're talking practical politics, that's actually what you're doing. You're conserving a lot of times a certain ideological tendency. But when you're actually doing, when you're organizing, it's a little bit different. You're actually doing something, right? You're actually doing. You're not like ideologically conserving a certain set of principles, set of ideas, stuff like that. And so this is this is where, again, my entire thing I care about is how the fuck do we get people, or get, you know, how do we get people to understand what's actually kind of happening with communication, with political communication? It's hard. That's been my project. That's what I personally sort of care about. I have some ideas, and I don't know how much I want to share these ideas, because again, it is sort of a working thesis, but it does revolve around art. We're not very careful. We're atomized creatures, right? We have, like, we're Anglo-Lockeans who are very separate from one another, and we pride ourselves on our difference from other people. And when you when you try to speak about politics, a certain position, other people interpret it as a potential parasitic sort of infection, right? They're like, oh, fuck. This is like a potential dogma that's going to infest my brain. There's that level of cynicism on a subconscious level, I think. And it especially depends on what kind of art you subscribe to, what kind of clothing that you wear, how you approach yourself. If you have the same aesthetic thing as someone else, there's a little bit more comfort there. In general, there is natural antagonism to how we operate because of how atomized we are on an individual level and how we communicate with other people. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And the answer isn't just to like make all art that this is again precisely what is this problem? Then we've seen this approached in the USSR and China. They knew this. Guys, they knew this was a problem. So what did they do? There was precisely strict sort of ways about going about art, right? Only certain art could be made. Art was criticized very, very deeply in places like the USSR. It had to be set within a certain framework. They knew this, but of course that didn't work. Stifling these things, newer art, doesn't work. But then we're in a conundrum. So what do? I don't fucking know. I have no idea. I know that again, you can't listen. If our project politically, especially on the left, is trying to relate to rural voters, right? We can't go put on cowboy boots, put on fucking Levi jeans, and put flannels on and go talk to them about socialism. Not everyone can do that. And we don't want to do that. Would that work? Would that help? Absolutely. We can't listen to all of the same music as them, right? Would it help? Yes. Understanding people's aesthetic, understanding specific people's art, what they subscribe to on an artistic level, that's important to understand. Now, incorporating that aesthetic, that's a whole nother thing. Incorporating that aesthetic into communication, that's hard. And I don't know the answer to that. Is it so bad if it leads to self-conscience later, even if it starts out dogmatically? I'm a little bit about what? But that's something patronizing people will help. No, I think that's precisely the issue. It's patronize. Listen, that's the problem, is that there is a patronizing effect to how we do things. We're individuals. We're atomized subjects. And when we see opposing art, or quote unquote things that are supposed to be opposing, we look at any interaction with them as something that could be potentially parasitic. There's a rejection. This is where racism comes from. But it goes deeper than just fucking way deep. Racism is just the fucking surface. There are deeper ideological tonalities to these things. Again, someone who loves rap, they love hip hop. They have a certain aesthetic. They have they listen to certain art. When they come across someone who loves country music, there is a by definition a certain antagonism that happens. And again, the historical thing we've seen is try to keep art as one linear thing, control art at large. Because again, whether we saw that in Nazi Germany, whether we saw certain forms of that in Eastern Bloc countries, they understood this problem, and you can't just suppress it. That doesn't work either, because then the opposite happens. Yeah, it's patronizing when you presuppose the other's interest is inferior to yours. 100%. Oh, you talked about putting on. No, I'm saying that. Listen, if you want to communicate, if you want to do political outreach to other people, say rural voters in America, one really helpful thing is incorporating their aesthetic, incorporating their art. But not everyone wants to incorporate a new aesthetic in art. No one wants to do that. Or not everyone wants to do that. But it certainly would help, right? That's the first step. People don't even realize that. Second step is the realization that even incorporating someone else's aesthetic isn't always going to work, because then you create antagonism back to the prior aesthetic or the clothing or whatever that you had. It's when you incorporate an aesthetic, by definition, there are certain antagonisms between individuals, and that's something that's a contradiction we have to overcome, and I don't know the answer to that. Yes, exactly, Vic. Vic is 100% right. Bo, the fifth column, is a wonderful example of this. Look at what he's doing. He's talking about left-wing politics, fairly emancipatory left-wing politics, from a perspective. Okay, this is irritating. This is fucking irritating. I'm sorry. I think you're coming at this in good faith. That is not the totality of what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't think wearing cowboy boots will convince anyone of anything either on its own. I'm not, listen, that's almost, okay, I know you probably didn't mean anything by this. That's almost insulting to hear on its own. Do you really think that I think that just wearing cowboy boots will actually convince anyone of anything? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But incorporating aesthetics is an entry level approach. It's something that can get you in the door with certain people. It's something that people might get their guard down around you. Yeah. No one's gonna fucking, just because you're wearing the same fucking, listen, people judge other people in the same fucking culture and where they're at. Absolutely. That's not the point, though. The point is that we live in a world that is quite literally multicultural, not in an ethnic sense per se, but in a complete cultural sense when it comes from entertainment, when it comes to art, everything like that. But Bo, the fifth column, is a good example on how it's actually successful to do this. The problem is you can't convince everyone to go fucking incorporate some aesthetic or, which is, thank you, David.
Political commentators expose the problem, corruption, with the economic
here's the
which is kept away from the public by the media.
Here's the thing. Political commentators are good. Independent political commentators are good about talking about the political economy. And that's good. That's good. I wouldn't have probably gotten to where I am without political independent journalists, and that's good. That should still exist. The problem is the posited the ideology, the analysis of ideology past pure political economy is lost. They don't talk about it. It's not, they're not interested in it. And in many ways, that's fine. So what we're ignoring after political commentators expose the problem is the weird ideological functioning after the fact, right? Marx and Engels talked about, false consciousness. Ideology is posited from the relations, the material control, the production from the bourgeoisie. They control these ideas that we subscribe to. We don't even examine from practical politics. We don't examine those ideas after the fact here. We talk purely about the political economy, and that's fine. And that's fine. That's good. But what we are doing is we're only talking about something within a specific framework when we need to analyze that framework larger than just the political economy. And this is where political commentators fail at immensely. So it's deeper than just political corruption, which political corruption does a lot, right? Right. The political economy has a lot of sway. Politicians are bought and sold for sure. But there's deeper problems than just that. And this is where I think independent political commentators fail at. They don't really go much further than that. Okay. Isn't there danger of coming of insincere when you try to adopt aesthetics solely on a Oh, absolutely. No, that's totally true. Yeah. There is a complete danger of trying to just yeah. But this is the thing. I don't think anyone really does that. Like when people adopt a certain aesthetic, it's because they actually appreciate that aesthetic or that culture or that whatever that is. I don't think it would be very artificial to do that. For sure. I disagree with the premise of incorporation of aesthetic. I think conversely, that's insulting. I don't think that it is a responsible way to engage people. To take the approach that you should incorporate an aesthetic just to communicate with people, yeah, that's insulting because what you're doing is you're placing an artificial, that's a pretty artificial way to go about it. But if you appreciate someone's aesthetic, someone's culture, and then you know how to engage with them, you incorporate aesthetic in an organic sense, that's not insulting. People do that all the time. Massive problem I have is trying to get people to understand that there is no such thing as apoliticism. Yeah, that's true. Being apolitical is supporting whatever the current power structure is in many ways. Absolutely. That's very true. People condemn me for being political. The same. Yeah. When I respond to political statements, they just, yeah. Yeah. Correct. Sure. That's a problem for sure. The first step is to explain to common people that their feeling of somewhat being wrong is, the first step is to explain to common people that their feeling of something being wrong, I'm sorry, I may not understand. The first step is to explain to common people that their feeling of something being wrong is correct. Oh, well, sure. Yeah. And then you can give them context and language, as to articulate and, explain what the actual problem is. But what the actual problem isn't just the political economy. It's much deeper than that. It's not just political corruption. That's really not, but that is how investigative the sort of new online sphere of journalism goes. It just talks about one thing. And then half the time what ends up happening is what emerges now, what I'm seeing is there's an ironic industry for that. There is an industry where people will take money from patrons or wherever, and they'll just tell their audience what they want to hear. And it becomes some cathartic sort of response. It becomes the same parroting. There's no creativity. There's no newer approaches. There's no adaptation to thought. And what happens is it is the same thing over and over and over and over again. And so that is where the problem comes that I have with practical politics right now. It's not to say that practical politics is useless. I come from a political science background. I'm very much interested in practical politics. But if you're interested in practical politics, a lot of the problems with practical politics is deeper than just practical politics. It's deeper than political economy. It's deeper than political corruption. Isn't that even what cringy politicians try to do? Yeah, absolutely, but they don't appreciate other people's art by trying to incorporate an aesthetic. No. The point isn't to incorporate it on an inorganic sense. It's to appreciate it. It's to understand exactly what they're coming across, like what's going on. And I say this, maybe I can create a more material anecdote about this. I can maybe say this. Guys, I grew up in a bit of a ruralish area in Missouri. It was sort of like a rural suburb, really is the best way to describe it. And so I had one half of my family lived in like a very small town in Missouri outside of where I lived. And then my other family lived in that suburb. So I had this experience of rural people. A lot of my friends I grew up with lived in very, very rural, middle of nowhere. And then my father owns a bit of land down in southern Missouri, and that place is even more remote. And I spent a lot of time there, and you grow to understand how people are. Listen, it's not that people in rural places are some simpletons. They're not. This is the point. If we can understand that, because the aesthetic approach is the first approach. This is the image that they're positing, right? In a lot of ways, people look at rural culture, country music, blah, 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 as some simpleton, some thing, some just primitive sort of thing. No, that's not what it is. That's not what they're doing. And they're not simpleton people. Left-wingers, urbanites, often are the ironic elitist in this approach, even though they agree with their emancipation. They're like, no, rural people suffer. They still look at them as children. That's what I'm trying to say, is that the aesthetic is the approaching ground. If you can understand their sort of surface culture and you can actually appreciate it, then you can start to understand their actual core humanity, right? So I talked about this in the rural and urban divide. It's huge. And people who actually care about the material conditions of rural people still look at them as children. They really do. And they operate in that tonality, like in many ways. And so it's not to understand. We don't understand rural people's culture, their aesthetic, how they operate. We don't actually have a concrete understanding of their very real human approach to things that aren't just simple. It's not just some primitive sort of way of living. If anything, rural people are true sentimentalists. Urbanites think they're left-wing urbanites think they're sentimentalist, and they are an idea, but how they live very differently. They don't live in a sentimental tonality. They're neoliberals. We really are. And again, rural people don't understand this. They look at people in the city and they see the neoliberal tonality to them. But they don't realize that a lot of these people actually care about them. Thank you so much, David. Thank you. What do you think about John Rawls' theory of justice, veil of ignorance? So I haven't actually read a lot of theory of justice. I thank you so much. I appreciate the donations, David.
John Rawls' theory of justice, veil of ignorance.
So I wish I could comment on that more. I really do. And John Rawls is someone on the list I need to get to. I haven't quite got to him though yet. So I apologize. I don't want to. I think if I'm understanding John Rawls' approach, I think it's pretty interesting. I don't think it's wrong by default. I just can't commentate much on it without probably getting something very, very wrong. Everything that I've heard about John Rawls and his approach, he kind of posits a little bit of a liberal socialism sort of thing. I think that's cool. That's fine. I think that's an interesting framework to approach things and something that we should explore more. I haven't explored enough of it, clearly. Okay. People should read Marx, Lenin. David, I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head, David. People should read Marx and Lenin, but Western Marxists don't understand dialectics. That's 100% correct. The problem precisely, we shouldn't read more Marx. Western Marxists shouldn't read more Lenin. They should probably read more Hegel. It's 100% correct. I completely agree. Okay, Scott, how do we get to people to look at things critically, though, rather than just accepting convenient rhetoric? Yeah, exactly. That's one of the biggest problems, too. I think when That is hard. I don't know if I have that answer, because that's something that I quite that's something that I care about that as well. I don't know. That's something that I find that a lot of online politics isn't critical thinking. It's not. It's not very critical thought. There's not a lot of change. There's not a lot of creativity, and that's hard. It's hard. It's really hard, guys. I care immensely on how I do this, and sometimes I stress myself out. I stress myself out doing this because I want to come up with new approaches. I want to figure stuff out with you guys, and I don't want to be in the same plane. Sometimes I push myself a little bit too hard, but that's something that critical thinking is not. It's very. I'm just not convinced this rural/urban binary is tenable. There's obviously a difference, but I'm not convinced that you're getting at the heart of it with this theme of understanding. It's not that there is a core of understanding and everything's solved. It's just the fact that, one, we don't understand. That's 100% correct. Listen, if there's one truth in what I'm saying that can't be negated, it is that people often don't understand other people. They have false misconceptions about them, and they're sort of a little bit of a niche culture or what they do at large. Now, the result of that, I don't know. I'm not positing anything that overly positive. What I am saying is that there is a divide. There still is a rural and urban divide. That is very much true. I don't see otherwise. Now, whether that's going to solve huge issues, I don't know. I think that it is a step that we should probably take because it is a prescient issue in my mind. It is something that's very self-evident, is that there's a lack of understanding on those grounds. Whether it's going to solve anything, I don't fucking know. That's not the point. The answer is no. The answer is to draw pretty pictures collectively. No. I don't think that's Pill's point. I think Pill's point is to work, collaborate with other people, and to create something that is critical, right? And it's not, when we think art, we think of painting. What he means by art is something far more broad. But David says thanks. Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry. I apologize, David. I couldn't comment on Rawls. But you do ask an interesting question. That's a very important thing to talk about, is that practical politics is a great intro. It's an intro to things, but that's kind of really, when you look at the totality of what's happening and what's going on, practical politics is really primarily just an intro. It's not. There's way larger issues that people can't even, like, again, as someone who's a political science major, and I care immensely about these things. Oh my God. When you get into theory, you understand real fucking fast that you're like, oh God, okay. Everything that I was doing here in this practical political sort of sphere, it's insufficient on its own. It's totally insufficient on its own. And they don't think that. A lot of people don't think that in that sphere. They think they're doing something significant. They think they're doing something significant at exposing the political corruption, and in some ways that they are. But the problem is you already have enough people presciently doing that, and we need to the most significant thing is trying to find new things to approach. Right? It's to be creative. And there's a very lack of creativity, and again, it's commodified, and that's partially to do because it is a commodified industry at this point. People make their livings doing this now, and there's going to be an irony here whenever I do this. But these are contradictions we have to try to overcome. Can we do it? I don't know. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but this is a contradiction I will have to overcome, or at least just not adhere to at all. But there is a very real response to when you're getting paid by people. You want to give them what they want. And what they want isn't necessarily always the case. So there's this, one other thing I see on online, one thing I see on online is that some people will parrot the, like, I don't take corporate money. That's good. But you have new slaves you have to adhere to when you do, right? So it's like there's this like extreme moral impetus from like journalists, they're like, look, we're not paid by corporations, therefore we can express our ideas. It's good. That's true. You can't express ideas outside of the corporate sphere of ideology or whatever, of capitalist ideology. Or you're free. You're much more elastic. But are you free? Like completely? No. You're still influenced by other people. And you're influenced by what your audience wants. And if your audience are Marxist, you're going to have to maintain that line typically. I mean, you don't have to. There are content creators that do change, but they go through a rough patch when they do that. If you're a liberal, well, you have to maintain a certain line. Ironically, I think liberals are actually, seriously, guys, I think liberals, people who are a little bit left-leaning liberals, are actually more open to change than even Marxists. This is a contradiction that I've seen as well. They're more likely to change their outlook in many ways. And then there's some bad parts about that. They don't actually, liberals in a lot of ways don't have concrete values, and that's true too. These are just some two contradictions that I've noticed. But you are a slave to a new audience. People think that just because, people think just because you take Patreon, you have a huge, you have a huge moral, you have the moral high ground by taking patrons' money. And compared to corporate money, you probably do. But it's not to say that you're all in the clear and that you're free to do whatever you want. That's totally not true. This is something I notice, and I kind of don't like it when they say that. True is now we live amidst a society of abundance. We produce enough for the whole planet. Yeah. Some ideas are philosophically necessary but politically disastrous. Sure. Absolutely. Epoch insists that we can't just stick to Marxism and call it a day. Yeah, most of the left knows that copying and pasting everything Marx wrote isn't the whole story. Absolutely. I mean, that's probably... I think that's the thing that Ben, I think you're kind of that is a good way to describe sort of my political project, is that, look, there are so many more tools in the arsenal that we have not used. And look, the traditional set of tools that we have used hasn't resulted in anything tangibly new right now. And this is the true ironic Marxist analysis, but people don't read Marx, so whatever. A lot of people don't, or they don't read him critically. And from there, we have to change. We have to be creative with our approach. If we don't, we become stagnant, and that's not good. This is a radical view on the left. It really is. Some people don't want to admit that, but it is. I don't know why, but it is. And so that is my project, is how we can create an environment where critical thinking is present. And right now it's not. Critical thinking is not present. And it really isn't. Yeah. Left-wingers are they're like, some people will say like, well, look at centrist and right-wingers. You're absolutely right. Left-wingers are far more, they think about things critically far more. But compared to them, come on. Let's raise the standards a little bit, please. Not to sound too, I talk about understanding, but like truly, like it's the fact that we do live in a culture that really does stifle critical thought. And then also, people's approach to critical thinking is ironically the most uncritical thinking ever. That's another contradiction. But even on the left, there's not a lot of critical thought. Yet they still think more critically than most. But I don't think that's good enough. Is to just be more critical than other ideologies, other political approaches. But I'll answer some chat. If you had to explain the basic concept of dialectics with someone with no philosophical background, where do you begin? Oh, that's a wonderful question. And this is something that's hard. Dude, dialectics is hard and uncomfortable. And I also want to say, Rue Godzilla said, like, you shouldn't call yourself a Marxist. In some ways you shouldn't, and we can get into that. I think ditching language is very useful in a lot of ways, traditional language, but we can get into that. It's a separate question. So for dialectics, it's hard. I think in order to elaborate on what dialectics is, you have to explain our current mode of thinking, and that being sort of Anglo-empiricism, like English philosophy. Engels calls it, and I like this, after a while I was like, man, why the fuck does Engels call like Lockean substances, like empiricism, metaphysics? But I kind of like that because it is sort of a metaphysics, the way Locke looks at primary and secondary, like sources or like essences, like I can't remember what primary and secondary substances, is that what he called them? And everything is separated. It truly is. Empiricism is an atomized way to look at things. Dialectics, then, if we were going to explain to someone what that means, we have to elaborate and say, look, our way. Did I disconnect, guys? I want to make sure, before I start going into dialectics, I want to make sure that everything's good. All right, everything's good. So I think we need to, first, if we're going to explain dialectics, we have to explain the current mode of thought. We have to explain our current mode of thought, that being sort of empiricism. You guys, I take it you guys know what that is. Then from there, we say dialectics posits something different. Rather than a material chair, I think this is dialectical materialism is an easier way of looking at dialectics in some ways, because there's a visual referent for it. Take a chair, and Lockean empiricism, like, a chair is just a chair. It's set in time. It's there. It doesn't matter in 5 years. It's going to be the same fucking chair unless it breaks. If it breaks into pieces, then it's wood. It's atomized. It's separate. Dialectics posits something different. Dialectics shows that there is no concrete time when that thing did become a chair, or language is reflective of that. The true thing that happened to that chair was it was wood, and it underwent a process. People put the chair together, and through that process, it became our conception of a chair. But it's hard to pin down when it happened. Dialectics sort of posits there is no separation of when it was a chair and when it wasn't. And that's only half the thing. I would say the most important way to visualize dialectics is processual ways of metaphysics. Processual ways of, like, living. But of course, dialectics is a lot deeper than that. It's to posit that everything operates as there's a positive and a negative, and from there, that's how that process goes. So, when you start getting into the binary nature of dialectics at the atom level, it gets a little bit harder to describe. But I would say for most people, just explain it like that. Explain it like that. It's the way that everything's interconnected. It's a process, and that through this process, it's hard to separate things because everything's interconnected when you really look at it. And I think and again, truly, like, when you compare empiricism and dialectics is correct. Yeah, things exist as distinct objects only within a certain window of their actual configuration. Well, so again, there's sort of the. I mean, I can, but like the idea is that through the sort of positive and negative approach, that is the driving motor of this process. So it's just like the motor, right? And that can include something like I think Engels, fuck his name up every time. Engels explains it pretty well in a material sense, where he looks at cell recreation or death. Here's a better thing. What is, like, we're alive or we're dead? All right. And when did that death happen? And he asked this question in regards to kind of prove his point of dialectics. When the fuck did death happen? Scientists, even today, it's hard to exactly pin down at the micro level when death happened. It's sort of hard to pin that down. When did it happen? Did they die a second ago? Or, when their heart stopped beating? Well, you can technically still be alive probably with your heart not beating. It's that our language at describing certain things is radically separate, and it's radically it's atomized. And Engels wants to prove that, look, death, if anything, is a part of being alive. Being alive and the potential end of death is what necessitates what calls our alive state. Thus, this alive, this death at the same time sort of transfixes itself. And it's a very hard thing to explain to most people. It's even hard in some ways sometimes to wrap my head around it. Yeah, so that's I would probably try to likewise, cause of death is hard to pin down. It is. And it's precisely here where you can say, look, this is why it again, truly, to look at the world as totally separate from you and everything else is probably incorrect. Sounds like monism a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of thinkers. Well, guys, because like Hegel didn't create dialectics. Like he kind of mastered it, right? He kind of took it into his own. But like the Greeks, if anything, sort of showed a more dialectical way of looking at things. And then through the process of philosophy, then you saw the English philosophers, and there was a more empirical way of looking at how things operate. I actually don't know much about Zeno's paradoxes. Let me look that up real quick, if I'm remembering this correctly. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I think this actually may be sort of the Greek approach to this is, I believe, the Greek approach to dialectics. I think that's what that is, kind of. I don't know exactly. I actually don't know too much about the Greeks regarding philosophy, so I might be. Is evolution not dialectical? Absolutely, it is. In socialism, utopian, and scientific, Engels says that as well. My research is going to be a direct continuation from Engels, Marx, and then Marxist archaeologist Gordon Childe. Oh, interesting. Okay. Everything is a personality cult? Yeah, in a lot of ways. It's easy to fall back into that. My go-to example for dialectics is how to approach black hole. We cannot see it directly. We have to measure its gravitational pull at nearby objects to discover it's a process, not a direct observation. It's like a decent example, yeah. I would say maybe most people don't even understand how black holes truly work. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, no, I mean, that certainly visualizes it pretty well. Proto-fascist use the god of war. Proto-communist use the goddess of love and war. Yeah, so, even going... I mean, so I really enjoyed that conversation I had with a guy named Americles. He has a little bit of a political Instagram account that he kept up. He's kept a lot of the old content that he used to make around fascism because he was a fascist, and he fell out of that real quick. And but he's read the entire canon of fascism. He's actually really, really much more well read than me. He's read all kinds of fucking almost all fascist theory. He's read like all of Marx and Engels, I think, at this point, something like that. The dude's super smart and well read. But regardless, he talks a lot about where fascism stemmed from a lot of Marx, like a lot of Marx's thought. Fascism sort of found a new baseline to approach politics sort of through that analysis, because Marx and Engels really did make a lot of really all-encompassing universal observations about things, right? So I get really annoyed when people look at Marx and Engels as purely political. They're not. They're political. I don't really believe anything that is apolitical. But Marx and Engels were talking about way more than just politics. So is dialectics the application of infant to events, like the step from... Yeah, I think so. That's a good way to put it, AF. Evolution is also really dialectical, the organism. Yeah. Vegan egoist, that's correct. When you bought that copy of, did you know it was tiny? No, I didn't. I was wondering, like, how the fuck did you, what the fuck? No, I didn't. So I have two. I'll explain. This is interesting. Here it is. All right. So, same book. I love the cover of this. This is beautiful. I love it. It is quite awesome. And then this is the other one. So, the reason why I didn't realize this was so small. That's funny, David. And the reason why I bought a second copy after I bought this, guys, is because, as you guys know, if you guys watch my videos, all right, I take pictures of the pages and I put them into After Effects and I create effects from that. So I'll try to find, like, and look, this has annotated, like, it's separate, all right? And if I want to put the text onto a video, I don't want those big black numbers right here. I don't want those in the video, or it could disrupt the continuity of how the text flows. So I was like, shit. I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy another version of the Society of Spectacle without annotations. Well, my fucking dumbass. There's two problems with this book. One, it's small as shit. It's small as fuck. And then two, it does the same thing. So the damn book is separate throughout all of it. So it looked like I got just two. This was really cheap though. So if any of you guys are looking to read Society of the Spectacle and you want the actual text, this is pretty fucking cheap. This is like $5. This thing was like 12. So go buy the cheaper one. But for me, I always buy, if I make a video about a text, which we will make a video about the Society of Spectacle for sure. I like to have the book itself, especially if the person's alive. I definitely do that. I'm not gonna, like, because I like using an e-reader. So almost every book here, I'll read with an e-reader and an online PDF. But I buy the book though, regardless. The dialectical biologist. That's interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of biology is still practiced undialectically, right? I think my girlfriend's a biology major, so I can ask her, but I don't know if my girlfriend completely understands dialectics completely. I've tried to have that talk with her, and she does not. My girlfriend is so uninterested in stuff like that, which is a little sad. I wish she was interested in it. My girlfriend really likes anthropology, though. Sitting down and reading theory is just the worst. Good theory people have massive lecture series. Is just the worst. I don't mind it. I don't think it's too bad. Radical Reprints has a lot of theory. Yep, that's correct. Yeah, I have some Radical Reprints. Spectacle was so hard to read the first time. I haven't read it. So yeah, give me one of them, Chief. I would. Fuck it, I guess I can. If anyone wants it, if I go up to the post office sometime, I guess if anyone wants to give me their address, no creepy stuff intended, I'll fucking mail it to you, I guess. I don't need this copy. Any ideas to incorporate more political theory into the videos? So, kind of. I mean, kind of. It depends. Yeah, it's hard to make videos that you would really concretely disagree with. And there's a lot of political theory I disagree with. It depends. I think a lot of the interesting philosophy, a lot of political theory of the past is quite, it's almost sort of common knowledge now, if that makes sense. So making a video about it wouldn't be as impactful as things like later theory. I think political theory has sort of has fallen off a little bit compared to what the past, right? So like a lot of philosophy guys of the 15th and 16th century was just like political theory. It wasn't just like philosophy and theory. There was always huge political arguments being made, especially with people like Locke, Voltaire. Oh god, there's a bunch of other English philosophers. I forget their names. Hume. Well, Hume wasn't just a political philosopher. And then Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes is another one. And it's hard. Like Machiavelli was probably the first political theorist, really. And there's a lot of videos on them, and while they're very good and you should read them, and I've read The Prince and I've read parts of the Leviathan. The book's fucking huge. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I've read the Second Treatise of Government from Locke. And I've listened to the first, an audiobook. So there's a first and second treaty. The first one goes into detail. It's Locke's response to another English political theorist defending monarchy, and Locke was like, no, it's not good enough just to defend monarchy, essentially. And yeah. So we've done a video about Rousseau and Marx together. Rousseau was political theory. I've read the Social Contract. But yeah. Society of the Spectacle was made at a time of the passive nature of television. True. I think we sort of underestimate the similarity between TV and the internet, though. I do. I don't think it's totally separate, for sure. But then again, I have not read the book, so I don't know. Have I read Wittgenstein? I have not. I think everyone loves him. I think a lot of people, I've seen this consistently. People, it's a common question: which philosopher was the smartest or craziest? And a lot of people say Wittgenstein. But I wouldn't know. I do not know. And I wouldn't know where to read or where to start, because I think he's published a lot of different works. Let's see. He had a very interesting life, right? I think he was in World War One as well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know what Wittgenstein's project is completely about, other than like a lot of original he wasn't Wittgenstein sort of like a merging of analytical and continental philosophy. I thought, if I'm remembering right, guys, did he not publish a lot? I thought Wittgenstein published like a shit ton of work, but I don't know. I truly am the wrong person to comment on this. I don't know. Oh, guys, I see on Google philosophy, Ludwig Wittgenstein, the School of Life. Let's see what the School of Life has to say. Is it going to be good?
A lot of unhappiness comes about in this world because we can't let other people know what we mean clearly enough. One
Poverty
of
of language.
who can help us with our communication problems is Ludwig
Don't.
Wittgenstein.
Boo.
He was a recluse. He had a stutter, paused for ages in the middle of his...
Yeah, dude. That was a little bit of a meme. Truly. Yeah, the School of Life is like an introduction to an introduction. Truly. Oh man. Oh boy. He did write a lot. Yeah, I thought Wittgenstein wrote a fair amount. But I don't know. Philosophical investigations, very well worth your time. Philosophical. Let's see. Okay, was that like one of his better works? I don't know. What do you guys think? What's his best work? Because I do need to learn more Wittgenstein. How many pages is bad boy? I don't know. Oh, okay. He died before this is published. Problems and puzzles in the fields of semantics, logic, philosophy of mathematics, psychology. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Logical positivism and then retract. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, what's up, Victor? He only ever published the Tractatus, if I'm pronouncing that wrong or right. Then other stuff was published after his death. Some collected papers and thoughts, and the investigations was the main one. Interesting. Okay, cool. Any recommendations for living philosophers in the line of Mark Fisher? I would say for anyone probably who's interested in Fisher, like such as me, I love Mark Fisher. Probably like, listen, I'm pretty sure like Fisher is just Fisher is sort of like Jameson. Like he's an articulator of Jameson, maybe, right? I can't tell you how many times Fisher references Jameson, you know? It's kind of anti-postmodern. Tractatus. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll have to check that out for sure. I'm actually working right now. I'm about to embark on our sort of script for our next video. Doing this next video is going to be tough. It's going to be a hard video to make. It's going to be very, very hard. But I'm going to try. Zizek points to the absurd of modern day capitalism in various forms. Yeah. So guys, I think I figured we were just going to do a little stream today. I think that's about it for today. I think I'll probably call it good. Probably get to work on our next video. I'm starting the script. So yeah. As always, guys, I appreciate all of you guys being here. Again, always give the spiel at the end of the stream. Patreon is how I survive. It's how I live. YouTube members down below is also... Uh-oh. My camera died. The internal... What the fuck? Whoa. I have... What the hell? All right, anyways, my camera's dead, but I don't know what happened there. But yeah, Patreon's how I survive, guys. Check out the Patreon. YouTube membership down below. Bookmark our Amazon link. Helps a ton. Appreciate all you guys. Camera died right on time. It got too hot. Sometimes that happens, but I have a fan that usually helps, but it usually doesn't overheat. Usually I don't have to turn on that fan. But anyways, I will see you guys later. Appreciate all you guys.